will entertain to open. A motion, a second.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So we are in open session. I'll entertain a motion to go to closed session.
So moved.
I'm sorry, sir, we don't need to do closed first. We're going to do open and take the draft stip, and then we'll go into closed from there.
Okay, we're in open.
All right, terrific. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for modifying their schedules so that we could modify this schedule. I think it was the right approach to take to enable a full review of the legislative session before we took action, to the extent that we might have had to modify the draft statewide transportation improvement program. Good news is that we did not have to do that. So we are very pleased to be in this position, to be able to present to the commission what we believe to be the single largest statewide transportation improvement program in Missouri state history. This is quite an achievement that's taken collective efforts of policymakers, state leaders like the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the leadership of this commission that has really been very forceful in its standing on the need for resources to do the job that the citizens expect us to do. So we couldn't be more pleased with this position that we're in right now, to be able to do and to kick off a public comment period on this draft with your approval. And we have Eric Curdy here, who has done a terrific job with our planning team to scramble and put this together. I mean, this has essentially been a year of 3 steps, right? Unfunded needs, preliminary draft road and bridge plan, and the actual stip itself. That's 3 for the price of 1 in 1 year, all while they upgraded a system right in the middle of it all. So amazing job there by our team, by our districts who have worked with planning partners around the state to put this together, by our planning partners, and by the communities that we are serving here by doing this, by listening to what their needs are and baking them into this plan and doing the best we can, and focusing on taking care of this system, which is a massive system with 30 years of deferred maintenance. 74% of this plan takes care of this system through asset management, and still yet, because of the size of this program, we are able to start getting at some of the capacity issues and the economic development issues that are also integral and part of the operation in the plan. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Eric, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you, Director McKenna. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Eric Curdy with Transportation Planning. So I think you have before you, or you have with you, the draft STIP. We talked about the details in it at our last meeting. Nothing's changed. Based on legislation, nothing happening. We didn't have to change anything. With your approval today, we'll go for draft comment to the public. Draft comment will be from May 18th to June 17th. We'll collect all those comments, look at them, make any recommendations for changes, and bring you a final STIP at your July commission meeting. Any questions?
Mr. Waters, I think you're on mute.
You said at the July.
Are we accepting the draft in the open meeting or the closed? Or do we have to do
We're in
that?
open right now, and we're just accepting the report. You don't have to act on it.
Right.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's just
you
accepting
want
it
to
so that we can
accept
put it
or
out
we
for
just-
public comment, and the final approval will come in July, hopefully, with your approval. I don't want to presuppose that.
You want the motion to accept it though, the draft?
No, we don't need any action at this time.
Okay.
It's a major step, and it's one of the 2 important items that the commission always acts on, and so we needed to bring it to you today.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was just making
Yeah.
sure.
So effectively informed consent, right? the comfort level, I think the confirmation that we did not have to make any significant or any modification based on any legislative action, which is just terrific news. So we're very excited by this step, and wanted to make sure just to have this meeting, check in with you to make sure that your comfort level is there as well, so that we can move forward.
So this,
I think the action we need to take is to pat Eric and Patrick and the other Eric and all the team that's worked on this STIP all year long, pat them on the back. That's the action we need to take right now, probably, and say thank you.
so this contemplates the 2.5 cents a year, netting out 2 cents a year over the next 4 years. It gets us up to the 500 million additional at the end of year 4, correct?
Yeah, the 500 million, though, is not all accruing to MoDOT. Remember that 30% of that, 15% each to cities and counties occur. So the net result to MoDOT at the end of the 5-year period is approximately 350 million, with about 75 million each to cities and 75 to counties. So what you see in this plan is that piece that's associated with the revenue that exists for MoDOT to apply here, and all the associated Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act monies from the federal government. So it's all of the combined resources available in our financial plan that was presented to you back in January when we started this process. And all of that is reflected in here. Very significant project demographics that Eric shared at the last open meeting that we had earlier this month.
And then this also includes, is it 25 million a year for the low volume roads, or it goes up to 75?
It has a total of approximately 130 million in it for low volume roads and
Over 4 years.
minor low volume roads. Yes,
Over 4 years.
over the 5-year STIP. Most of it is in the first 3.
And then there's an additional 100 million from Senator Hegeman.
I think it was, Senator Hegeman was a big leader in that. It was started with the governor's State of the State address and his budget submission. That carried through the legislative debates, and it was added as a new source of funds. The House of Representatives had changed the source of funds that the governor presented to revert back to state road funds, which would have created a problem because we've got in this STIP allocated all of the available road fund dollars over this period of time. The Senate Appropriations Committee Chairman Hegeman was very aware of that and advocated for, along with many of his colleagues, holding to the governor's position in the budget, which carried in the conference committee. We're very pleased with that as well. This is a very good thing. So this plan itself does not have the 100 million. That's a separate action that we'll be bringing forward to you for consideration. So very significant, yet well over $200 million of investment on minor and low volume roads in the state over the next couple of years. And the 100 million is a front-loaded fiscal year action item for us that we're working on plans to bring for your consideration. And we'll have those at your ready very soon.
Yeah, great.
Patrick, will you have a breakdown of the difference between how much is going to low volume, how much is going to the minor?
Yeah, we can do that. Eric?
Yeah, we'll have that. We'll have exactly the routes. We're working on that right now, identifying. I will tell you that primarily all of them are low volume.
Yeah, one of the nice things, just as an aside, one of the nice things about the single fiscal year infusion of $100 million is that, you know, we are still, even with this scale of the program, as we talked about, this brings us to 1% of the replacement value in total dollars to deploy annually of the road and bridge network in the state. So there, you know, what you're looking at is a 100-year replacement cycle for all of the road and bridges. and they don't last that long. So it still presents some challenges in terms of prioritization. I think we have a very good working relationship at the community level with our planning partners to help prioritize those things. But we've been doing asset management, which can be frustrating and difficult to explain publicly. But when you have limited resources and you're trying to increase the overall condition of the network and protect the assets, sometimes you have to work on things and keep good roads in good shape. And it looks like you're working on things that don't need work, but it's cheaper to do that than to always go to the worst first. I think, that's well known in terms of industry, but that's a hard public sale. But sometimes there are conditions that become so bad that they're below a minimum standard that we should accept. And so occasionally having resources to come up from the worst first is really helpful. And that's, I think, will be part of what we can do here in a way that's responsible and I think expected by the policy move to make those dollars available. So what we're trying to do is look at, this is about $100 million on what we would consider to be about a $1.2 or $3 billion problem. So it doesn't solve all of it, but it is a huge shot in the arm. And if we take a little bit of that worst first approach and we direct the proportion of these dollars to where the problem is, we're going to make really significant gains here. So we're very pleased by this, and the team's pretty excited to be able to make the progress because, we work in these communities that are dissatisfied with the conditions, and it's a relief to our team to be able to make progress here, just as it is to the public who's traveling on these roads.
So just a couple of questions. The comment period was May 18th to June. What was that date?
17th.
June 7th.
Yeah.
And just so I'm clear, because I get asked this question. So in the 5-year STIP, there'll be $130 million going to low volume roads. And then we have $100 million that's going in this year from the governor and taking them and keeping it in there.
That's correct.
Yeah. But that 130 million, most of that's going to be spent in the first 3 years, right?
Yeah, we do programming in this STIP. You see essentially 100% of estimated resources allocated to projects in fiscal year 23, 4, and 5, and approximately 50% programming in 26 and 7. And that gives us on our estimated financial resources an 80% cover ratio over the 5 years with projects, and we do that for fiscal constraint. So we can reasonably assume and prove to Federal Highway under federal regulations that all of our expected construction is within a reasonable assumption of our financial plan. And it gives us the ability, for instance, with the inflationary costs that we have. So next year, when we're updating this STIP, we should be able to bring half of fiscal year 26 as new revenue in, about $750 million for new projects. But we already know that the pricing that we're getting on our existing projects is higher. We may take a $300 or $400 million chunk just to keep the construction in 23, 4, and 5 flowing. We may need to upgrade those estimates, and certainly as we get bids, we'll have the reality of those bids to consider for what current prices are, and then we'd just lower the expectation of new projects in fiscal year 26. So we won't have committed to them, but that proves fiscal constraint. It's a very good structure. It's sound. It can be a little frustrating when you're seeing increasing prices, but it also means that the Commission's commitment for construction that's laid out in the STIP can be funded reasonably, and we see no evidence that that wouldn't be the case.
So Patrick, I appreciate us taking the effort to get that done up there for those folks. And could we see something, not a big presentation, that shows us the routes that are going to be done in the next 3 years? So you got 230 million, and then Greg can take that and show it to his girlfriend up there.
Yeah, Eric and his team are working on it. We're getting the maps. We're looking at, we did have, I think Commissioner Ecker and Waters particularly be pleased by this, but we do have updated conditional information that gives us a more complete and more current set of current conditions. We knew in some areas conditions were declining even beyond what we'd reported last year. We have confirmation of that, so we have a concentration here of effort that might well work well for our contracting community as well, to be able to move resources and materials to these places that need it. We're working on the construct so that we have a good objective approach for you to consider in the way that we want to do this. But for the $100 million, we're trying to move very quickly. So the team's working on a plan. We want to bring that forward to you in our next commission meeting and for that consideration. But we'd like to be able to advertise in June. We'd like to be able to bring in responses to that advertisement in July. And we'd like to approve contracts in August and get asphalt out there. And get this moving. Industry's that's gonna be a challenge. But again, we're trying to keep this very simple. That 100 million particularly, we're trying to keep very simple. It's really just, let's get that blacktop out there and let's get rolling. So I think our team's done a really nice job on a preliminary basis. We're certainly gonna check down to make sure the commission is comfortable with the plan, or and to the extent that it has modifications, we can adjust to that. But we'll have maps, we'll have lists of road segments, and all of that is underway right now. The team's really working hard.
So Senator Hagerman called me the Friday when he was driving home after the budget approval, and he was excited about being able to maintain the 100 million. And so I've already sent him a dozen roses, but he put it back on me and Tom to say that he sure hoped that a lot of that money gets spent in northern Missouri. And I said, well, if we go by condition of roads, I'm sure it will be. So
I think we have a scaled plan appropriate to the issue. So yeah, I think you're going to be pleased with what you see on a preliminary basis. It is, again, I think it was a targeted investment for an intended purpose, and we're trying to match that intent as best we can with the plan that we're putting together. So again, this is really a unique opportunity for the organization to be able to have these resources. We have said for many years that the problem is the resource, and if we were able to get the resource, we would make progress here, and that's exactly what we are going to do. So it's phenomenal. It's putting a little, it's squeezing the system a bit, but I tell you, our team loves to get stuff done and to have the resources to do it. And there's a lot of creativity that goes into, really looking at the system and trying to predict the conditions and to make the best use of precious resources like taxpayer funds. So, and get that benefit.
I think Eric can probably still hear me there.
Yes,
Yeah.
Eric.
So the other thing, I'm interested in seeing the roads because, as much as 4 years ago, we said, let's pick out where those trucks go and pick the north, south, east, west roads. I'm sure that's what you're doing. The other thing I'd be interested is, you have 25 to 33 million over the next 3 years to go up there. Are we using the 100 million? And I'll give you an example. If you're putting a 1-inch hot mix down over a road, Are we using the 100 million to maybe say, let's put another half inch on here and just buy tonnage, and you don't have to buy equipment and labor and all that again to bring those roads up? Or are you going to say, no, we've got 2,500 lane miles and we're going to go to 3,500, but we're going to put the skinny stuff down? How is that being used?
Well, you know, one of the things we're looking at is to keep it simple. You know, we're going to try to, you know, let's face it, you can't build a road from the top down, but you can improve the condition from the top down. So in this case, in certain areas, I think we're going to provide flexibility to add additional material to take out some of the rutting. So you're not just going to be looking at 1 inch only. We're going to look at the condition of the road itself and provide the contractors with the ability to add material to make a smoother road. And in some of the cases, you know, I think we will find that we'll have some duration here because these are they are some low volume roads. So the duration itself will be okay. Obviously, some of them you know, thinking of the pictures that Commissioner Waters sent with the rock trucks traveling near him for some of the levee work that's going on. You know, those are some of the things that create, you know, issues on condition on an ongoing basis. But I think, you know, the one thing I would caution is that prices have gone up significantly, and nobody's going to like the total mileage that we can get out of this money. You know, we're gonna get as much as we can. We're going to try to keep it as simple as we can and as consistent as we can. But in terms of estimated lane miles, we're probably looking at, you know, maybe 1,200 lane miles with, you know, maybe 600 center lane miles. You know, it's somewhere between that and maybe 1,500 on that basis in terms of the pricing we're getting. Eric's pulling out his calculator to check me on that, so thank goodness.
My point is, I'd advocate for putting more tonnage down on that same amount of lane miles while the equipment's there and the prices are where they are. They may go down, but to increase the bearing capacity of that rather than adding more lane miles. But you know, you've got guys that'll figure that out. And it gives us talking points when we go talk to the senators next year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a significant, you know, we're looking at a significant improvement. You know, I think the part of the rationale, and I'll let Eric speak to this, was, you know, ideally looking at segments. One of the things we're doing here that we'd like to do, I think it's going to be more well-received by the public, is when we identify a road segment, we're going to go the full segment rather than patching. So, you know, what you'll have is fewer patches, more segments that have been completed from interchange to interchange, intersection to intersection. That's easier for the contracting community. It completes a section, and ideally what happens is we identify those segments where more than 30% of that segment, or at least 30% of that segment, is in poor condition, and we're grading the whole thing. So I think Eric's got a little better description there.
So we identified routes that were no more than 30% good.
Right.
And then it rained in the north last night. So one of the things we want to make sure, you know, that's kind of a joke, but there's edge treatments that need to be done to these roads, and a stripe needs to be put on top of them, and we need to do it right and get in and get out. So that's what we're looking at. Is the first tier, we identified a menu in central office as potential projects for the districts to choose from, and the first priority was those roads that were less than 30% good for the entire segment. The second tier that we looked at was 30 to 60% less than 30 to 60% good. But primarily, we're focusing all our energy on that less than 30% good, doing what it takes to get that road back to a good standard, a good level of service for what the customer's expectation is, and put a stripe on it and take care of it and be done.
Yeah, it sounds great. I'm glad to hear you talk about repairing the rutting. To me, that's one of the most dangerous parts of what's happening to these roads. And then being able to do the full segment is a big bonus too, because I get a lot of complaints about us patching. You know, you do a quarter-mile strip and then you move 3 miles down the road and do a strip. So doing those full segments and fixing those ruts, that's music to my ears.
Yeah, and this is going to elevate expectations for every other, we're, like I say, we're working about a 10% of the problem scale here. So 10% are going to be happy, 90% are not. So,
But if we do a good job with it, people will see that and they'll support us a lot more, I think.
Yeah.
We'll get a lot more support when they say, look what MoDOT did to this road. And I think the public will turn around.
and I think the other
When they
thing
see
to
the
keep in
work
mind
we've
is
done.
we're trying, look, to do this in a single fiscal year, we have to be efficient, but, we've gotten very much in the habit, and it's a good one, of dealing with drainage ahead of time before we're doing paving and doing those things. We don't have the time for that here. And so what we're looking at are, think of some of the innovations challenges where we had, drainage cleanouts and grouting that was done. We're going to try to use some of those techniques to extend the life of the drainage that we have without the additional time to do this on this scale. And we would think that the work that we do to extend the life of the drainage would probably exceed the life of the pavements that we're putting out there. So, what we're trying to do is say, this is pavement. And that's what we're trying to maximize here, to get as many miles as we can, considering all of the comments, Chairman Brinkman, as well, to not spread it so thin. We have thin treatments like chip sealing and everything, and that's not what we're doing here. So the idea is we will still use our maintenance forces to augment, to do patching, to do chip sealing, and to do what our normal work plan is. This will all be contracted out and augmenting our activities, and I think that way we can be getting, providing a double benefit to the citizens in the areas that we're working on.
We could just, once you tell Jay, just go ahead and start working on the governor for another 100 million next year.
Hey, that's exactly what I was.
I don't think anybody wants to see us for at least a month. So they'd like to see our plans for how we're handling the resources they provided. So we're going to.
Who's the next chair of the Appropriations Committee?
Well, I think, point taken, right? If we do view this as an opportunity to perform, given scarce resources and given a very significant shot in the arm here, we appreciate it and we want to perform. We want to do a good job, and we would like to think that that could be replicated with additional resources in the future if they're available for specific actions like this. It's a little out of cycle and a little uncomfortable in some ways that we're trying to address this, but a little discomfort's okay every once in a while, right? Especially if you can make some progress.
Patrick, I had another question, not quite as related, but ARPA funds. Is the legislature still got work to do with ARPA funds? And I was looking through some of the rules and regs on ARPA funds, and I'm not sure where it talks about roads and bridges qualifying for that.
The budget was passed. The budget bill for ARPA was passed. I don't believe that they allocated 100% of what was available this year. There's still some more time. There are some conflicting guidance on eligibility. Some of the eligibility for infrastructure itself was just based on general government functions. So you have to make the leap that says infrastructure investment is a general government function. And then there were also items in the authorization that enabled revenue replacement even on an average basis for the average across the nation. So there were some complicated things from a budget perspective that our budget director here had to go through. I do think that the general consensus from a policy perspective was to go after those things that were very clear in the guidance. So things like some of the infrastructure surrounding water, wastewater, broadband, Those were some of the big dollar amounts. Those are big advancements for the state on infrastructure. They weren't very specific to road and bridge, but there were some good infusions relative to port investment that were added as part of the late rounds of the budget, both in our budget as well as in the economic development budget. So there was, I believe, $30 million in the economic development DED's budget for the economic significance of port investment. One in Kansas City for $25 million, and I believe $5 million for New Madrid. So I know that those are very important investments. In our budget, $25 million for ports was added for port in Jefferson County. And so there was a small infusion of about $8.2 million for some of the internal kind of HVAC facility upgrade type, wastewater improvements here in some of our facilities. That is really the only core ARPA funds that are kind of touching the department right now. But again, this is, I think, a multi-year issue and strategy, and I do think policymakers thought that we had a bit of a whale to swallow with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act allocation and the SB 262 funds, and they wanted to really see the department's plans for that, which, that's what this meeting is really all about. So these are moving as quickly, I think, as any DOT in the country to bring the funding to a planned perspective, and then to move it into very specifically funded projects and to start the contracting and roll and get this benefit done. And with what we're seeing with inflation, boy, there was no time like the present to get on this.
There anything else?
We are good if you are. That's all we needed to, it's just kind of a gut check to make sure you're okay with us releasing this for public comment. And we look forward to those. I'm sure we'll get lots of them, and we'll incorporate all of that and bring it for your consideration when you're looking at the final potential for approval of this plan or modification if you see fit.
All right. All right.
Great.
Are we going to a closed session then?
Give us, we actually, before we move over to the close, we need the motion to enter into a closed session. And then we're going to hang up from this call and then go into the next call, the next WebEx for the closed meeting.
Great. Thank you.
Then we go into closed session.
Second.
Move to adjourn from here.
We don't need to adjourn just yet. We'll adjourn at the end of closed.
So we just get off of here and go to closed?
That's correct. Oh, we need to vote real quick on the motion in the second. Or
All in
the
favor,
entering closed.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign. We can go
Thank you, guys. Sorry, this is so awkward.
close. So we get off of here and dial back in?
Yep, and then there's a second email from Jennifer for the closed WebEx information.
Right. Okay.
See you in a bit.
What's that, Commissioner Waters?